Remember God's grace. Paul's exhortation here in verse 12, just say no to ungodliness and worldly passions. What is it that makes this Just Say No campaign different than Nancy Reagan's? The answer begins in verse 11. For the grace of God has appeared, bringing salvation for all people, training us. The grace of God saves us, and it trains us. So this passage changes everything. It takes a simple command, just say no, and it surrounds it with Jesus Christ. The Bible never expects us to hear God's commands to us in isolation from God's work for us in Christ. It is always rooted in Christ. That's why the theologians will say the indicative precedes the imperative. What is true follows what you do, or precedes what you do. And in this case, Paul is rooting his command in verse 12 to just say no to ungodliness and just say no to worldly passions or desires. He's rooting it ultimately in the indicative of verse 11, and that is that the grace of God has appeared, it has saved you, and it's training you. It's God's grace in Christ. That's why Paul begins all of his letters, including this one, with the greeting, grace to you. And that's why he signs off all of his letters just as he does this one, grace be with you. That grace is both the beginning and the end of the Christian life, not self-effort, not self-sufficiency. It's God's grace in Christ. Self-control is possible in a God-glorifying way because the grace of God given to us in Jesus Christ. And it is this ever-present grace that liberates us from sinful desires and teaches us to just say no. The reason that Just Say No campaign under Nancy Reagan didn't work wasn't because there were things that you didn't need to say no to. The reason that Just Say No didn't work is because the toaster wasn't plugged into the wall. It had no power. And that only comes by God's grace in Christ.